Okay? All right. So, oh, it works now. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can take a seat now, we are going to begin. Yeah, does everybody have a chair? Yeah, I see there are a few chairs available. Please come in. Great. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to Brussels, and welcome to the 2025 EOSC Symposium. My name is Marilyn Fieschi. I'm the CEO of Science Business, a news company specialized in research and innovation policy. And it will be my pleasure to serve as chair for this important gathering. Important in many regards. First of all, this is the main gathering of the EOS community, as we can judge by the number of you, right? The second reason why it's important is that this edition is going to mark the launch of the EOSC Federation. After many months of hard work and of coordination, well, the EOSC Federation is a major operational step in consolidating EOSC as a European data space for research and innovation. All right, so this we'll know more about later today, and there will be a little ceremony. But before we get to the ceremony, there will be another exercise looking into the future. And the future is not very far away when we talk about the next multi-annual financial framework of the EU, the famous MFF. So we will look at the future of Horizon Europe and the future role of EOSC in that context. We'll do that with a panel discussion. And by the way, in times like this, when the MFF is boiling, all the negotiations have started, it's important to be close to policymakers. That's the reason why this symposium is taking place here in Brussels. All right? I'll tell you a bit more about the agenda in just a second, but we have a few housekeeping rules. And here they are. First of all, there is no live streaming, but there will be a video recording that will be made available afterwards. The second thing is that there are two photographers. So for those who will come on stage, don't escape. You'll have to be taken. You'll have to take a picture of you before you go. There will also be a group picture for the entire family, but there we will give you more instructions as we go. This is a community event, and that's very important. So while there will be plenty of action on stage, you, sitting in the audience at several times, will be invited to ask questions. And to do that, you will have to use a Slido. Okay, so we'll show a QR code at regular intervals, and at that point, please feed us with some questions. Oh, emergency exit. Okay, capture that. And if you want to know how to escape from this room, there is actually more instructions at the registration desks. You've got it all in mind? I will quiz you afterwards. That's the Slido QR code. Okay, you can already take it. Open the link, but we'll first have a series of keynote speeches. And that takes me to a quick overview of the agenda. We have a very, very dense program ahead of us, a very rich program. Today there will be 3 sessions, and all of them will be taking place in this room, unlike tomorrow. But let's not jump ahead. We'll start by a few keynote speeches to set up the overall symposium. Then, as I said before, we will look into the future of Horizon Europe and the role of EOSC with a panel discussion. We'll then have a coffee break. First, coffee break. Okay? Right before the coffee break, there will be a photo group. So that's where you don't escape and run to coffee. You'll wait for the instructions. After the coffee break, we will move to the tripartite chapter. So there again, we will invite representative of the three parties of the governance of EOSC. We'll have a little discussion. We'll break for coffee a second time. All right? After the second coffee break, there will be the EOSC Federation chapter, okay, with a mix of introductions, use cases, and a ceremony. All right? Tonight, there will be a social dinner, and I heard that there would be a DJ and a dance floor, hence the importance of taking advantage of the 2 coffee breaks. All right? Very good. Without further ado, I think it is a good time to start. And to do that, there is a little tradition of giving the floor first to the hosting country. And so here, Belgium, obviously. We were due to welcome Vanessa Matz, the Belgian Federal Minister for Public Services, Public Enterprises, Digitalization, the Federal Property Management, and last but not least, Federal Scientific Institutions. Unfortunately, Minister Matz wasn't able to join us, but I'll have the pleasure to invite her Chief of Staff, Kurt van Ramdonk, and Mr. Ramdonk. I'll leave you the floor, and we wish you a warm welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to welcome you in Brussels and to welcome you to the EOSC Symposium 2025 in the name of Minister Vanessa Matz, our minister, but she couldn't make it today, so she sent it to me to replace her. This event comes at a critical moment as the EOSC Federation enters its operational phase. This symposium offers not only a platform for strategic debate, but also an excellent networking opportunity. Please enjoy also Brussels. It's a very nice city, very safe city, so enjoy our city also, our capital also. A successful Open Science Conference was organized during the Belgian presidency of the EU last year. The event provided an opportunity to showcase our achievements and our commitment to open up science to everyone. Belgium's efforts in open science are wide-ranging. Those efforts include promoting open access to publications, developing new archiving methods, enhancing the skills of researchers and data managers, and strengthening our data archives. And of course, at the heart of today's gathering is the integration of Belgian research data into the European Open Science Cloud. Belgium is committed to further develop this European undertaking. Many of our institutions have been actively engaged with the European Open Science Cloud Association. I'm going to enumerate now all the intervening stakeholders because Belgium is a nice little country, but a rather complex country, as you know. So this framework not only includes the federal institutions, but also the federated entities. First of all, you have BELSPO on the federal level, which is involved. Then you have also the Flemish Department of Work, Economy, Science, Innovation and Social Economy. You have also the Ministry of the Wallonia-Brussels Federation. Then you have, not finished yet, then you have the Walloon Public Service, and then the Brussels Innovators, and of course, all kinds of external stakeholders and experts. But in Belgium, you have a lot of different complex levels of decision makers. At the federal level, we recently launched the Federal Open Science Cloud initiative led by Belnet. This initiative aims to support federal scientific institutions by developing policy frameworks, technical solutions, and digital platforms for open access to data. Ultimately, the Federal Open Science Cloud Initiative will enable researchers to adopt transparent, collaborative and innovative practices. This positions Belgium as an active contributor to the wider EOSC ecosystem. The launch of the Flemish Open Science Board in 2020 is another example of our ambitions in this area. This initiative advances open science policies in Flemish research institutions and has already led to positive results, with the establishment of many data stewards and researchers in Flanders. The Wallonia-Brussels Federation is also very committed. Since 2018, a decree has promoted open access in higher education and the gradual emergence of an open science ecosystem. Particular attention is paid to equity in open science and the development of fair business models. Minister Mats is not only responsible for science policy, but also for digitalization. She is therefore very pleased that artificial intelligence takes a prominent role during this year's symposium. There's a great potential in the synergy between open science, advanced data infrastructure, and the responsible use of AI. One of the top priorities of Minister Mats and her regional colleagues is to develop an AI ecosystem in Belgium. Such an ecosystem will greatly benefit our scientific community. Open science, by making high-quality data available, enhances the transparency of AI models. At the same time, AI enables researchers to analyze vast amounts of data and identify new trends. These benefits illustrate the potential of combining open science and AI. I have no doubt that these and many other topics will give food for thought and contribute to an inspiring symposium. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all a stimulating and unforgettable Symposium 2025. Thank you.
Mr. Van Brandonk, thank you very much for these welcoming words. I think in the layers of the Belgian complexity, you forgot the European ones. So with the EOSC, we're going to turn to Europe, since the European Commission sits right up the inner ring here in Brussels. So next on stage, I'd like to call Marc Lemaitre, the Director General for Research and Innovation at DG Research, European Commission. Marc Lemaitre, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. Dear Minister Dijkgraaf, dear Professor Lepton, distinguished guests, dear friends of the European Open Science Cloud. After the warm, welcoming words from Minister Mats, as expressed by her head of cabinet, it is really a great pleasure to also welcome you on behalf of the European Commission to this year's EOSC Symposium, a key gathering to shape Europe's collective ambition for open, trusted, and data-driven research. Digitalization is transforming research before our eyes, perhaps even faster than our eyes can see. It is changing how data are collected, analyzed, and shared, and with that, how knowledge is created, validated, and translated into societal and economic value. As this transformation advances, our understanding of research capacity is also changing. Beyond laboratories, observatories, and accelerators, research now increasingly depends on digital infrastructures, networks of data services, computing capacity, and skilled experts. This shift is not only accelerating the pace of discovery, it is redefining the structure of research itself, and with it, the conditions for Europe's competitiveness and sovereignty. Few issues are therefore as crucial for the future of our research and innovation ecosystem as ensuring that we govern, manage, and share research data effectively and responsibly. Today, I would like to zoom in on 3 topics. First, the role of EOSC for Europe's competitiveness. Second, the way in which EOSC is embedded in the Commission's proposal for the next framework program, as well as the role EOSC can play in advancing European strategies for research and technology infrastructures and also for AI in science. And third, sovereignty in data critical for research. The past year has seen renewed calls for Europe to act boldly. The reports by Mr. Draghi, Mr. Letter, and Mr. Haytor all send the same message. Europe must integrate its capacities, connect its talents, and ensure that knowledge and innovation circulate freely across borders and disciplines. Otherwise, we will fall behind. But if we do things right, we can look to the future with confidence because we have a strong foundation to build upon. We have world-class research infrastructures and universities, vibrant research communities, and a large pool of skilled researchers and innovators. Yet, too often, these capacities operate in silos or remain scattered. We must connect them better, remove barriers, and valorize knowledge to unlock the full potential of Europe's collective intelligence. EOSC perfectly embodies this vision. It links communities, data, and infrastructures. It allows researchers to find and reuse data and tools seamlessly across countries and disciplines. As Mr. Haytor rightly noted, the European Open Science Cloud clearly has the potential to become the most widely used infrastructure in Europe, if developed properly. And let me add, together we are on our way to developing it properly. The remarkable progress that you will be showcasing in this symposium in building the EOSC Federation demonstrates that Europe is leading the way towards a new model for open, trusted science. It is inspiring to see that the first 13 EOSC nodes under construction, together with the Commission-procured EU node, already gather a rich diversity of institutions, disciplines, and national data services. Congratulations on this important milestone. As the EOSC Federation expands and welcomes new communities, there will be challenges along the way, but above all, extraordinary opportunities. What matters most is to keep the momentum, the ambition, and the shared purpose that have brought us this far. You can count on the continued, unwavering commitment of the Commission along this journey. Let me now turn to how EOSC fits into the broader policy and strategic picture, the strengthening of the European research area, the European strategy for research and technology infrastructures, the AI in science strategy, and the Commission's proposal for the next Horizon Europe. President von der Leyen has set a clear direction. Research and innovation are and must be at the heart of Europe's economy and future growth. Our proposal for Horizon Europe for 2028 to 2024 follows that vision, a strong strategic program to propel the Union's priorities for the coming decade and to reinforce Europe's competitiveness. For the first time, we propose that Horizon Europe includes a dedicated pillar on the European research area, with research and technology infrastructures at its core. The text explicitly highlights the need to expand and consolidate EOSC as Europe's research data space, ensuring that fair and machine-actionable research data are available across Europe. Through the proposed doubling of its budget, Horizon Europe will help bring Europe's ecosystem of world-class facilities and services for research and innovation to the next level. The ERA Policy Agenda 2025 to 2027 provides the foundation for this effort. It lays out a clear roadmap to reinforce open science, enhance infrastructures, and expand international collaboration. And it explicitly identifies a strong and high-value EOSC federation as one of its concrete outcomes. Another key reference is the European Strategy on Research and Technology Infrastructures, adopted by the Commission in September. The strategy sets out to ensure that researchers and innovators across Europe have seamless access to cutting-edge facilities, high-quality data, and tailored services. It also calls for stronger coordination of funding, investment in critical new world-class capacities, and the integration and use of digitalization and AI across all research and technology infrastructures. Additionally, in October, we adopted the European Strategy for AI in Science. This strategy highlights that the transformative power of AI depends on 4 core enablers: access to large volumes of high-quality data, computing capacity, scientific excellence and talent, and sustained funding. These enablers come together under the so-called RAISE initiative, the Resource for AI Science in Europe, being launched, in fact, today at the AI in Science Summit in Copenhagen. The strategy positions AI not as a standalone technology, but as a transformative layer to be rolled out across Europe's digital research ecosystem. At the basis of it, there is data. Trustworthy AI requires trustworthy data. This is where the role of EOSC and the other common European data spaces lie. They provide the large volumes of high-quality fair data required for AI at scale, managed in ways that are ethical, secure, and transparent. So together, the 2 strategies for research and technology infrastructures and for AI in science provide a coherent framework for the fast and successful digitalization of research and innovation. By resolutely advancing along this path, we can make Europe the world's most trusted home for critical data, for research, giving European researchers and innovators unique advantage in driving technological progress and tackling global challenges. This brings me to my 3rd point, data sovereignty. Science is global by nature, but in today's world, access to critical data, digital technologies, and services is increasingly affected by geopolitics. We have recently seen critical research data sets taken offline, and even long-standing data collection efforts brought to an abrupt and complete halt. Such disruptions are already affecting EU research capacities, notably in fields like public health, environmental monitoring, or climate modeling. When critical data sets or analytical tools are hosted outside the EU, or when their access or even their content becomes uncertain and can change from one day to the next, not only Europe's capacities, but also core values such as academic freedom are at risk. This is why today data sovereignty is not a nice to have, but a strategic necessity. It means ensuring that European researchers can control their data and services, understand under what rules they are processed, and reproduce, share, and build on research results without undue external constraints. Here, EOSC plays yet again a pivotal role. It turns sovereignty into practice, building transparency and trust into every layer of the system, while ensuring clear governance, accountability, and ownership of Europe's shared data resources. But sovereignty should not mean isolation. Many of today's greatest challenges, from climate change to pandemics or biodiversity loss, require cross-border collaboration and shared access to global data sets. Europe must remain open and outward-looking, committed to global scientific cooperation founded on trust, transparency, and shared values. To achieve this, we need strong, resilient, and autonomous research infrastructures. That is why EOSC is not just a technical enabler, it is a strategic asset for making Europe the global hub for trusted collaboration and scholarly freedom, attractive to talent from around the world, and ultimately more competitive. So let's seize this moment. Let's act together to complete EOSC fast and make it the backbone of Europe's digital research and innovation ecosystem. I want here to thank wholeheartedly the member states and associated countries represented in the EOSC steering board, as well as the EOSC Association, which, together with the European Commission, drive the coordination and alignment that allows to move forward as one. You can count on the full support of the European Commission in this vital and transformative endeavor. Let's make it happen. Long live Europe.
Thank you, Mr. Lemaitre, for also placing the important topic of today in the broader agenda of the EU for research and innovation, and for showcasing the pivotal role of EOSC. With this, we are going to have our last keynote speech, and for that, I'd like to invite Robert de Graaf, who is the President-elect of the International Science Council, formerly Minister in the Netherlands for Education, Culture and Science. Mr. de Graaf, over to you. Do you have slides?
Thank you so much for the invitation to speak at this conference. And actually we'll have a kind of a broad overview of both the future of science and perhaps the future of Europe. And perhaps you might think what somebody once said about the young Winston Churchill, that he said, I wish I knew so much about anything as you know about everything. So it will be kind of a broad range perspective. So where is science moving? And I would like to submit that the previous century was the century where we discovered the building blocks of reality. We discovered the particles, the genes. Let me try to see how this works. Where do I? Yeah, there you go. So we discovered the building blocks of life, DNA, RNA, proteins and genes, the particles, atoms and molecules that make up matter, and the bits and algorithms, yes, that build up information. But I think actually now, in the 21st century, it's our job to start building from those building blocks. So we are moving in the age of artificial life, of genetic editing, CRISPR-Cas, in terms of designer materials, quantum technology, and of course, in the age of artificial intelligence, neural nets, and machine learning. And indeed, if you think about it, for instance, every form of life that you can find on the planet is just an absolutely negligible fraction of all possible genetic codes and possible organisms. And the same is true for materials and for information. So I always like these old maps of cartographers. They mapped the part that was known, but the unknown, the blank spots of the map, they usually figured those kind of sea monsters. And so what are modern day sea monsters? So I'm a theoretical physicist, so I'm very happy. I know exactly what I don't know. 5% of the visible universe, so all the matter, radiation, stars and planets, makes up roughly 5% of the content of the universe. And so my sea monsters are unknown particles, dark matter, dark energy, that are comprising the remaining 95% of the universe. But I would say that actually this is a vast underestimate of what we don't know. Because it's not about what we will be discovering in nature. That's this missing part of the map. It's about everything that we can possibly build in the laboratories here on planet Earth. So the real space to discover is the space of everything that can be made out of these building blocks. And then I would say that what we know right now is like an infinitesimally small fraction of everything that's there to be discovered. And how do we navigate that infinite space that actually we will be discovering in the 21st and later century? So I think we're really at the beginning of a new renaissance of science. Because these three technologies, in life science, in material science, in information science, are really accelerating each other. Perhaps the biggest killer application of artificial intelligence is to find new materials by which you build new computing machines that then actually give even better AI. And some optimists say that the rate of progress of science will easily increase tenfold in the coming years, which means that most of us will live till the end of the 21st century, at least scientifically speaking. So where does that leave data science? So I think we probably all agree that the thing that's really kind of pushing us in this direction is this huge tsunami of data that actually is kind of washing over us. And science is somehow trying to deal with this tremendous, exponentially increasing amount of data. And how do we do this? Well, you will talk a lot about artificial intelligence. And there's been a long paradox between, some sense, the qualities of computers and human beings. They're very different. Computers are algorithmic, very deterministic. They have this kind of 2D architecture. You can easily plug in a printer or an extra screen. Our human brain is very different. It works in 3D through neural nets. It's much more probabilistic. But of course, importantly, it's adaptive and self-learning. And it's this famous paradox, Moravec's paradox, that says that the easy problems are hard and the hard problems are easy. That is to say, that what is easy for a human being, like playing football, is very difficult for a robot. We have all seen the funny movies. And actually, multiplying huge numbers is very easy for a computer, very difficult for a human being. But I think we're living in a time when this paradox is being resolved, and where somehow these two domains are flowing into each other. And often this is known as the bitter lesson. And the bitter lesson is that actually there's nothing that beats the sheer power of Moore's law and the exponential growth both of data and computing. Ultimately, that's proven the most effective way to actually get to AI and to many other applications. And I think, it's easy to see that this, a continued exponential growth, both of computing power and of data, will lead to remarkable new results. Now, if we continue, we have seen some examples already. I think most of you are certainly familiar with the spectacular result of DeepMind's AlphaFold, who solved the protein folding problem. Actually, it could only do so because decades and decades of careful work by chemists provided the very curated and precise data set that the DeepMind engineers could mine, and indeed been extremely successful. One of the deepest problems in biology: how do complex molecules attain their three-dimensional shape? And as you I think all know, this led to last year's Nobel Prize in Chemistry. And really interesting, by the way, this application of AI in science that also shows, by the way, the borders and the limits of these methods, because this algorithm is much less successful when it's confronted with very radically different kind of molecules. So in order to progress, it needs also new kind of data. So I think this is my grand scheme of things. So I plotted here the scale of physical effects towards their complexity. And on the left and the right, you find my domain of expertise, the smallest particles, the largest structures in the universe. We have been extremely successful to capture them with a handful of particles or a few lines of equations. But this leaves, what I like to call the messy middle, all those phenomena where you don't have a grand unified theory or a simple equation. The life sciences, the neurosciences, most of our behavioral sciences, and all the planetary science. And I think the AI revolution is promising, with the great advent of production of data, to actually address that middle part. And that raises many questions, of course. What are the class of problems where actually artificial intelligence will find structure in this great complexity? How robust are those results? Do they generalize? And can we even understand it? But it's extremely exciting to live in a time when this all will be kind of addressed. So if we move on, particular, I think, in those areas where we can create a virtuous cycle where foundational models built on good data lead to design, whether it's new molecules or new materials or new algorithms or new configurations, that then can actually be experimentally observed in laboratories, whether it's through robots or through other ways of iteration, analyze, and then you create new data. This is, of course, the kind of circle which led some of the AI algorithms to be extremely successful in Go or chess, because they could play against themselves. If science can start playing against itself, we get spectacular progress. And I think this is an extremely exciting domain. And again, this all depends on providing the right kind of data. So another trend, I think, that I want to describe is the globalization of science. So if you look at this animation, you see the growth of the number of articles in science over basically the last 25 years. And you literally see other continents coming online. So this is another kind of spectacular exponential growth that we're living into. And I love this map, recent map, that shows the amount of scientific collaboration. So all the lines, this is not the diagram in the back of your in-flight magazine, but these are all the co-authors on scientific articles. And just shows, what an incredibly intimate and close-knit web we have woven in terms of scientific collaboration. And I think a third component is that if we look at modern science practices, they are increasingly interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. So I often think of science as laying this jigsaw puzzle. I don't know about you, but I start typically at the edges where the disciplines are. And I think now we're moving again in this complicated middle part where the various disciplines meet and where also other stakeholders meet. I think an important trend is that we see more and more transdisciplinary research, which is research being done by those involved, whether it's governments, it could be neighborhoods, it could be those industry, NGOs, all those that in the end have to deliver results. And there's this famous phrase, I repeat it once more: the world has problems, the university has departments. It's not completely untrue. So often I think of bringing the wrong plug to the wrong country. So we all know this, that it doesn't really fit. And actually my service in government can add a little line to it. Government has ministries. And again, the great challenge is to work across those boundaries. I think if you think of the House of Science, it has many interior walls, it has many lowered ceilings. And I think we are in a moment where we are looking at redesigning the scientific enterprise. So let me share two quotes of Nobel laureates that I find inspiring. Here's Steven Weinberg, who said, "Most advances in science are discoveries about nature, but sometimes science makes a discovery about science." And I think that's one of the moments that we're living. That in order to produce relevant and interesting and exciting and breakthrough science, we also have, with the same critical view that we look at the world, look in the mirror and look how science is organized and operates. And the second quote is from Sidney Brenner, the biologist, Steven Weinberg, of course, famous particle physicist, architect of the Standard Model. "Progress in science depends on new techniques, new discoveries, and new ideas, probably in that order." And again, the techniques are absolutely amazing that are coming up. So it's a very, very exciting time in science and in redesigning science, and you're all part of it. But I think it's also a very exciting time in the history of Europe, as we already heard in the beautiful speech by Marc Lemaitre. So there's this big stack of reports telling us, what the future of Europe should be, what our challenges are. And my kind of one-line summary is that in Europe, the whole is often less than the sum of its parts. And actually, I would say the same we could have say about science. There are many puzzle pieces missing too. So why is this important? Well, clearly, many of the challenges of Europe, and I'd say also the world, require collaborative science and technology, whether it's energy security, climate, biodiversity, food security, clearly national security these days, and the regulation of technology. And many of those challenges, whether it's cutting-edge science, whether it's the societal challenges or the economic competitiveness, require continental scale. Also economic competitiveness. We see that the real opportunities for productivity growth are typically in those areas where scale matters. So Europe has, as its advantage, its continental scale. It has to take those opportunities. But of course, this all happens in a very worrisome background. We see geopolitical tensions, we see countries turning inwards, international collaborations often seen as a zero-sum game, which is not in science, as we have seen with the spectacular growth of global scientific collaboration. And then technology is accelerating. It's accelerating at a pace that a period of 3 months is relevant, right? You might have a new iteration of your favorite AI chatbot. And so Europe has to react to all of this. And I would say that, modern science, if you look in the history of science, you can say it's Europe's strength and it is its gift to the world. And it was born in this unique ecosystem of the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, this republic of letters, where there was all these different groups, kind of combination of competition and collaboration, a plurality of cultures, and an openness to the world. European science wouldn't have been there if we haven't been open in the past to outside influence. There's this beautiful graph I'd like to show, which is it's the period till the 14th century, and you see, how the various different countries and regions have contributed. So the good thing is that, there's no single country in Europe or around Europe that can claim to be kind of the dominant power. It always has been this incredibly collaborative, complex system. Now, if we look further, and I press 10 times more this button, yes, oops, I wouldn't go back. So if you look at Europe's position in science and technology, obviously it's a major player in terms of the competition with the US and China. You roughly see it in terms of the share of publications and patents. We are doing really well. This is this strong foundation that was mentioned, By the way, this graph is interesting too, that if you take the 3 big blocks, you don't cover the world. There are many other countries, what in America is always called ROW, the rest of the world, that contribute significantly. And so it's not perhaps so much about how big your piece of the pie is. It's also about what you say, can we grow a bigger pie as a world in terms of science and technology? If you look at expenditures, actually, we see that EU is not doing really well. We know we are not reaching the Lisbon goals, and there's a real challenge here, where you see particular in terms of absolute value, the US and China taking off. Of course, you all know these are largely private R&D expenditures, but yet, these graphs are good to know. And this graph, and I'm not an expert in this, but it led to a lot of worries. This was a recent review of the 64 critical technology areas, where according to this report, China would lead in 57, the US in 7, and Europe in none. So this is also something, I guess, that we should definitely worry about. So I would say, one of the things that really struck me as a very important recommendation in all those reports, particularly in the Draghi report, is that Europe should move towards a real research and innovation union. If we see our national policies, they're often fragmented, they're decoherent, and sometimes even contradictory. So it's like you have a material which is not magnetized, and these little magnets are pointing in all kinds of different directions. And I think what we need is a more alignment. And so we need kind of big magnets, not only in CERN, where we accelerate particles, or in other large facilities. But I think it's incredibly important that these research innovation policies of member states are being aligned, and that we have a common strategy on those areas where scale is needed, which might not be everything. In fact, there are many areas where you do not need a European approach. But I think certainly in this area, data management and curing data, obviously you need. And so I think it's very important that we move ahead here and indeed, have our EU instruments as powerful magnets for this further alignment. And also use smart specialization. If the sum of the parts wants to be more than, the whole wants to be more than the sum of the parts, we have to use distribution of labor, we have to avoid wasteful duplication, we have to fill critical gaps that currently are present in the European research enterprise. And I think we also should be smart in how to do this geographically. So distributed networks where all regions benefit, not only those that are just lucky enough to host our premier research institutes or infrastructures, should be part of this collected effort. It's incredibly important that this actually is something that every region, every member state can fully support and see their strength. And I can't think of a region that does not have intrinsic strength being reflected in the collective effort. So I like this graph, whatever the metric is, it might be highly distributable, but this is this list of highly cited researchers, and I like the fact that actually the Netherlands at number 7. But of course, I also, perhaps it's kind of a little bit confrontational, that roughly the number of top scientists in my home country is roughly the same as in Harvard. So how do you look at this? Does that mean that one university can replace a whole country? I would say no. I think this shows that a relatively small country like the Netherlands can beat a major research university. However, in a more distributed way. In the Netherlands, we have 13 research universities that are all typically in the top 200, but of course none of them is in the top 10. And where Harvard educates less than 2,000 students a year, in the Netherlands we educate with these 13 research universities 100,000 students. So it's a different model. And shows again that if you take the elements and bring them together, we can build a scientific superpower. And I think that is the challenge for Europe. So I would say, Europe's strength in science, I sometimes joke, its bugs can become its features. No, I think we have a unique system based on collaboration and competition. Europe's complexity and inertia are actually advantages for a scientific infrastructure. They lead to stability and predictability. The next framework program, 7 years program, is actually, from the point of view of many national policies, an infinity. I was just saying that the average lifespan of a European minister is now less than 22 months. Openness is another strength. So starting with the 27, but then of course having 20, and I hope soon, if Japan joins, 21 associated countries, and many other like-minded countries that are looking for reliable associations. So Europe transcends its geography. If you look at the map of Horizon Europe, you see it's becoming a global configuration. And many, many other countries on that map are potential, I think, collaborators of Europe. So that openness, also in a geopolitical sense, I think is a great strength. So one way to move forward is what I like to call sector plans. If you look at the matrix of European strength, so the strategic goals that we have as a European Union, and the research networks, the question is, can we somehow optimize this matrix by thinking of that both the columns and rows are kind of a maximum output? So can we build strategic alliances around key themes and then, again, use this kind of distribution of labor to make sure that in an atmosphere of trust and reliability, those research partners can concentrate on their strength, knowing that the complementary jobs will be done by other partners. And I have an image where I think of the map of Europe, the scientific map of Europe, very similar as you have maps in your atlas, where you have these beautiful geological maps, and you see certain areas lighting up in certain themes. So perhaps the map of Europe, of scientific Europe, looks very, very different, whether it's AI or quantum or nano or biosciences. And I think this would actually be a great strength. Finally, I think, large-scale infrastructures are a European success story. In Scrabble, it would be triple world score, because the science, obviously, world-class facilities are typically beyond the financial and organizational capacity of member states or even individual countries. In innovation, because the European way, these are open facilities where cutting-edge technology is shared in public-private partnerships, also with companies and NGOs, and create spin-offs. And of course, geopolitically, the fact that you can actually bring countries together using infrastructure. And so I'm very happy to see that in the vision of the European Commission of the future of Europe, these infrastructures, which I think are kind of the backbone of Europe science enterprise, play a dominant role. And I think, again, this is something where Europe has unique opportunities. There are many things that we can do in Europe, but there are a few that probably only we can do. And I think these large-scale infrastructures are definitely part of it. But finally, if I wait long enough, yes, perhaps end with two kind of more philosophical points of view. So in this kind of three big blocks that are now coming, dominating world science, I think we see very different philosophies. I'm stealing this basically from a famous science and technology philosopher who said, like, the US is typically about markets, it's about freedom, it's about open-ended, the endless frontier, the famous phrase from Vannevar Bush. Science and technology is seen as pushing the economy and pushing away the boundaries of the unknown. China has perhaps a deeply ingrained different point of view in how they think about science and technology. It's not about markets, it's about the state. It's not about freedom, it's about security. And it's about state power, self-reliance, social control, national security, and global prominence. So what does Europe offer us? And I think the European perspective is neither on the markets nor the state, but it's much more about the citizens and their rights. So regulation, human rights, democratic values, social well-being, ethical boundaries. And I think probably all three are important elements for the future of science. But I think Europe can offer a complementary point of view that's absolutely crucial. And so, in my view, the absolute key asset, the unique selling point of Europe in the future should be its soft power. There's a famous saying, politics is downstream from culture, and I think this is also true in science policy. I think our values, and these are central, I think, to your meeting here the coming days, the academic values are absolutely critical in setting up Europe. So academic freedom, to investigate everything, especially those political sensitive subjects that are under threat around the world, whether it's climate, biodiversity, vaccines, or gender. Collaboration, fostering a collaborative, pluralistic environment where multiple perspectives are welcomed and actually seen as a strength so that we can build on each other's work. What's the next one? Openness, obviously, how could I miss that? So responsibly sharing our publications, our data, software, and other research outputs, and transparency, making the entire research life cycle visible, and I think it helps also with the quality of science. And finally, I think inclusivity and equity, ensuring that all individuals, regardless of their location or institution, can participate. And when I was recently speaking about being inclusive, somebody said to me, stop speaking about inclusiveness. Talk about expansive. It's not about how people can join your effort, but how your effort can grow and make space for other voices. And I think, again, this should be an ambitious European goal, an expanding scientific enterprise that can ensure that all individuals can contribute, and I would say not only scientists, but everybody that's involved in the scientific enterprise, which in particular also includes all stakeholders and citizens. So I think actually that would be a tremendous progress for Europeans' open science, and I'm very, very energized by the fact that you're all working on this great enterprise. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think it was extremely inspiring. It raises a number of alarming points, I think, and this is something that you may go into with the panel. There are also some very good messages, more optimistic. So it's good that you took a seat. I will now hand over to my colleague Simon Pickard, who is Network Director at Science Business, to take us through a panel discussion on the future of Horizon Europe, as I said before, but also on the role of EOSC in supporting competitiveness and data sovereignty. I also want to acknowledge the fact that many questions have come through Slido already, and this is a good thing, so keep them coming. Some of them may be addressed now with the panel, others may be addressed a bit later on. But just keep going, all right? We're keeping an eye, and we'll try to take as many as we can. Simon, may I leave it to you now? Please, welcome.
Thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, Robert. That was truly inspiring and a little intimidating to have to follow. But fortunately, we're going to have some friends to talk about some of the key messages that you've raised, some of the philosophical and the very practical questions about the role that EOSC can play in the future of European scientific enterprise. And I love the framing of this because it takes it out of the laboratory into something that's far more embedded in the ecosystem and the societal dimensions of what Europe wants to be in the future. It's a pleasure to be here and to be invited to moderate the panel. Also because, from a science business perspective, back in 2017, we put together a small group of our members to act as a kind of informal sounding board for Jean-Claude Burgelman and colleagues at the Commission, when EOSC was just the proverbial twinkle or the glint in the milkman's eye, just the beginning of an idea. And to be here 8 years on to prepare for the launch of the Federation with the nodes falling into place, it's been a remarkable journey so far. So our sincere congratulations on all that's been achieved so far. But we're going to take the next 40 or so minutes to talk about some of the broader questions around EOSC, competitiveness, global research cooperation, and data sovereignty. And so to join Robert in these reflective conversations, we have three other eminent guests that I'd now like to invite to the stage. In alpha order, Matthias Björnmalm, who's the Secretary General of CESAR. For those of you who are less familiar with what they do, it's Europe's leading association for science, technology, and engineering universities. Matthias, you're welcome. Second, Maria Leptin, who in many ways needs no introduction, but the president of the European Research Council and former director of European Molecular Biology Organization. Maria, thank you for finding time in your incredibly busy schedule to be with us today. And last but by no means least, Klaus Tochterman, the president of the EOSC Association. Klaus, come and take your seat on the stage with us. So, as Marilyn mentioned, we're going to run through 3 or 4 questions with the panel and try and weave in a couple of your questions from Slido. Probably the ones that are more open in nature and less reliant on the European Commission to provide a technical policy answer. But let's get going with an opening question to you all. I mean, we've heard that EOSC from the very beginning has been part of an ambition in Europe to create the kind of research and data infrastructure that will position European science at the forefront of the global scientific enterprise. And so in that context, how well do you think EOSC will be able to contribute to Europe's future excellence in research and innovation, not least as its vanguard platform for research data sharing and collaboration? Let's start with you, Maria.
It's actually, after Mark and Robert, it's hard to say anything at all. Those were many, many important insights. We have, of course, over the last couple of years seen unprecedented technological developments that have significantly increased the potential of data sharing in research and innovation. And as funders of frontier research, the ERC is well aware of our role and our duty to harness the potential to ensure Europe's excellence in these areas. I see many ways in which data sharing can make a big difference and where EOSC will be able to play an important role to make these changes happen. The framework conditions have to be right, and we also have to be aware of potential risks if we approach this topic with too naive a mindset. I think we all agree that data sharing enhances collaboration, so that map that you showed will probably become even busier, and that data sharing fosters communication across disciplines and institutions and geographical boundaries. And by pooling data from different sources, researchers can tackle much more complex questions than if they had to rely only on their own data. And one of the greatest illustrations of this, where we didn't only tackle more complex questions, we tackled a problem, was COVID, where data sharing in the first few weeks was amazing and allowed us to recognize the disease, discover its source, and track it over the years afterwards. So the importance is obvious, and research results will have a stronger foundation and be more reliable through data sharing. The speed of discovery is also highly important, and this is not only in high-tech areas, but also in very fundamental research that depends on the analysis of observational and experimental data. You've mentioned the climate data, the longitudinal health data. And when data from previous work by other researchers are readily accessible, this allows, of course, for faster checking of hypotheses and avoids duplication efforts. Both of which are of huge, Thanks. So Data sharing, and this is also a big societal value that many researchers are aware of, increases transparency and trust in research. When data are shared, researchers can verify each other's results and reproduce earlier studies, allowing them to build on verified results. This supports the integrity of research and helps to build public trust in science, hopefully, which is essential for the societal adoption of innovative solutions. But of course, all this works only if data are of high quality and trustworthy and interoperable. Now, interoperable is really a big issue where EOSC can help, and it's of huge importance. For example, in the health environment, a colleague who's running startup companies recently tried to do better only in their own hometown, not even across national borders, by getting hospitals to share their health data of patients, of course properly anonymized, etc. Huge, great idea. Hospitals were all in favor until they discovered that they couldn't because they didn't have interoperable metadata. So that is clearly an area where EOSC has an important role. And finally, I would like to raise the point that sharing data also makes us more competitive. So we must encourage an open data culture and openness, interoperability, etc., eventually also drive economic growth. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Maria. Now, let's have a second stakeholder view. Matthias, over to you, and just be careful you don't read Maria's first page of notes instead of your own.
Okay, so we don't have to repeat that. Thank you. No, so thank you very much. And indeed, I also remember fondly when we started this whole process, as you started with, Simon. So CSAR, uniting over 50 universities of science and technology across all of the continent. We were one of the 4 founding members back in summer 2020 of the EOSC Association. And I'm so happy to see that it's grown to the vibrant community that we have here with us today. Back then, so this is summer 2020, a year before, 2 years before, we were deeply involved in the launch and the setup of all this. Back then with Carlos Muedas and his teams, open science, open innovation, open to the world was the driving paradigm now. And you can see the narrative, of course, with the EOSC and its logo and all of this. That's where many of us feel very at home. Politics have, or geopolitics, the framing of the narrative have moved substantially since then, as was introduced by Mark and by Robert as well, very eloquently. But I think, and I feel the key point to me here is that EOSC, in the broader sense, is more relevant than ever. I think it's a wrong conclusion that some may make that this open science politics has moved beyond that. It's much more fundamental about how open science and EOSC contributes. We had very eloquently introduced how the accelerating technology is today driving geopolitics, and how data and scientific data is crucial for advanced technologies. I also felt we put forward very nicely how scale and critical mass and excellence is how Europe can stand out in this area, not by attempting to copying what others are doing across the world, by instead adopting a deeply European approach. We often work with excellence underpinned by research integrity. So the European approach to research integrity, we've heard the 4 words that is captured in the European approach: reliability, honesty, respect, and accountability. So to me, having this as the underpinning approach, how we do data science, how we do big data, this is how we are both it's the right thing to do, but it's also, I'm deeply convinced, the most effective way to move forward from the broader societal perspective. Be it to have the right scale, the right critical mass, and the right excellence in what we're doing. We have already the right tools, the findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable principles. We know that they can work really well in commercially sensitive areas to protect patient privacy, and also in the broader strategic and geopolitical context. Because open science and openness doesn't mean always open all the time. It is about these fair principles, and this community is the one who has been driving how to do this well. So I see this community and the EOSC Association as a central pillar for Europe and a European approach to how we do data and scientific data and big data in the best and most effective way possible, which then feed into the bigger picture around technologies, advanced and advanced science. For Europe and for the broader world. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matthias. Now, I'm going to turn to Klaus next. Preaching to the converted to a degree, I would say, Klaus, but I mean, what are we also missing? I mean, from the association perspective, you're now looking ahead to the announcement, the launch of the federation. What's the future for EOSC to contribute to European excellence in the future?
Marc Lemaitre highlighted that knowledge is one of the few things which grows if you share it. And that is one of the insights from early knowledge management research in the late 90s. And this principle that knowledge sharing leads to more knowledge underpins the European Open Science Cloud. That is very important. Through the sharing, through the connection of existing data repositories, we create new and more knowledge. And the EOSC Federation, we all know here in the room what that is, so I can use this specific term. The EOSC Federation is a trusted, and we already heard that term as well, interoperable infrastructure. It allows researchers and institutions and innovators across Europe to share, access high quality, that's an important attribute, high quality data in a responsible way. And again, Marc Lemaitre highlighted that there is a need to connect our capacities in order to boost Europeans' excellence and innovation. And again, it's the EOSC Federation, or in a broader term, the EOSC enabling that. The EOSC enables seamless collaboration across disciplines and borders. And through that, it can accelerate discovery, support evidence policy, and strengthens European capacity to innovate in areas like, for example, artificial intelligence. And EOSC, we will address that later also, ensures that data sovereignty, an important, very important attribute to the European Open Science Cloud, that data sovereignty, provenance, and ownership are respected. That means that data belongs to the data providers, and the data providers retain ownership of their data if they are part of EOSC, or more specifically the EOSC Federation. And based on this, European researchers can participate in global collaborations without compromising control or trust. In short, data sharing through the EOSC Federation transforms isolated datasets which are currently hosted in different data repositories, into a powerful European knowledge system. And you can, well, learn more about that if you visit all the booths of the nodes of the EOSC Federation. If you go outside, talk to the nodes, and of course also in the third session today, when the EOSC Federation will be welcomed.
Excellent, thank you, Klaus. So let's move on to another topic, and I'm looking at Robert now, which is going to draw on your presentation, also some of the remarks made by Marc Lemaitre in the opening, and it's about the geopolitical realities in which EOSC is growing in this day and age. So more broadly, how do we keep global cooperation alive? How do we sustain it in these rather tense and turbulent times?
Well, it's an excellent question, and the paradoxical situation is that I think we are more aware than ever of the need of global collaboration. Maria, you mentioned infectious diseases, the development of vaccines, but also if we talk about the oceans, of climate or biodiversity, we need this. And we see actually the geopolitical pressures actually moving in the opposite direction. So I feel here Europe really has an important role. These days, you know, data, as was mentioned by Marc also, is data itself could be at risk, international data sets, etc. So the collaborative model that Europe is championing, and I think, you know, coming back to EOS, it's like this kind of federative system is incredibly powerful because it breaks through disciplines, it breaks through national borders, it builds a kind of resilience that I think is absolutely crucial for the world. So I feel here Europe has a very important role to play. We see that, you know, supporting the global data infrastructure, that's absolutely key in solving all our societal challenges, is at risk. And I think, you know, Europe has to step up, it's stepping up. And the kind of open nature of Euro collaboration is absolutely crucial, because I think something can be a growth model for the future. There are many like-minded countries that are looking exactly for these kind of partnerships. And so what I like very much about the EOS initiative is that it's, we have these grand challenges, but this is really putting it into practice. So I was saying, look at these maps of Europe lighting up, and I feel this a little bit like, well, mixing metaphors, the nervous system, it's how data flows through this big ecosystem is absolutely crucial. And by the way, I feel in looking in the past and in times of great geopolitical tension, there have been quite a few ambitious scientific initiatives that, in the spirit that scientific collaboration might lead to more political and economic collaboration. So I think as a scientific community, we should also stay ambitious, and I think we need inspiring initiatives to connect the world. And I think if there's something that is connecting us these days, it's data. It's something indeed that grows when you use it and share it. And I think it's actually also Europe's most valuable natural resource. Right? So if you think about my point also in the lecture, if science actually wants to deliver, if the promises of science and technology actually, there's also truth in advertising there, we have to work with citizens, with local communities, with regions, and the best way to do that is to have those local data and actually and be very respectful with them and think of this as a growing effort. So I hope also that EOS, in its ambition, has this wish to grow larger and expand.
Very good. Now, that's an extremely positive way of looking at things. We were here only a few days ago, actually, with the Commission hosting its first or most recent large-scale conference on research security. And obviously, one of the entry points for this panel discussion and a lot of the other discussions for later in this symposium is data sovereignty. Now, Marc Lemaitre underlined that we should not be thinking about this as isolation, but in this new paradigm of the need for openness, the need for Europe to lead in promoting collaboration, but growing concerns about data sovereignty, security, and so forth. How do you think that should look in the future of EOSC? Maybe Matthias, you'd like to go first on this.
No, thank you. And I think the right word was the one that was brought in there, which is resilience. I think maintaining a strong foundation for how we do global engagement and its growing importance to continue and even strengthen our global engagements is the key here. And it was the same to me, that's the same conclusion in the research security discussions, that you want to, if you have a strong and resilient foundation in your engagement, you can continue and strengthen global engagements with confidence. And it's the same in the data space here. I think a striking example of why this matters came earlier this year when some of you may remember the Associated Press reported Microsoft had canceled the email account of Karim Khan, which is the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, following an executive order from the US administration. So this sent shockwave across many of your organizations, many of my organizations as well, because almost every major one, including most universities, use Microsoft infrastructure for core functions such as email. And I'm fully agree with what Marc Lemaitre said in the beginning here. This is not about disconnecting from the US or from US companies. It's about ensuring that our excellence in research, education, and innovation cannot be disrupted by political decision-taking elsewhere. And I see that EOSC should be a part of this, building that type of resilience, having a world-class federated data ecosystem that ensures our capabilities are reliable and resilient. So we should be excellent and strong because we have such a great system here, and there gives us the capabilities to confidently continue to engage and strengthen engagement on the global stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matthias. Maria, I'm going to come to you next, and also building on one of the questions from the audience, which is about what role the Commission and EOSC can do to support global researchers and data saving. Marc Lemaitre made reference to that in his opening remarks, the interruption to many of the kind of research fields that you would have been supporting at EMBO and indeed through ERC. So how can this kind of platform help to strengthen Europe's appeal, but also to sustain this kind of data gathering and analysis, particularly in the longer term?
many things to be said. I just want to make a little remark on the Microsoft point. Paul Romer, Nobel laureate in economics, at the recent Lindau meeting said, the best thing Europe could do to protect itself and to protect its sovereignty, data sovereignty, is stop importing machines that run on Microsoft, because that basically gives away our data. Anyway, yes, so when I hear some of our governments or some organizations talking about how can we benefit from what's going on in the US here, you know, brain gain or whatever, I just think that is the most short-sighted thing we can ever say, and we only suffer. We only suffer. You've mentioned it, the data we're losing. And we have, and this has been very nice and extremely comfortable. In my own research, I have relied on databases that were absolutely essential for my work, that were fully funded by the NIH in the US. And we've just had a comfortable ride all this time. We've not been forced to face our own responsibility here. And I'm very glad and grateful to the fact that the Commission, our own commissioner, have recognized this and are looking for solutions. This can't be done. The 800 million that have been pledged to you know, first aid for data are nowhere near enough. We will have to think about this in the future. But again, just saying drawing boundaries is not the right way. Yeah, I think that's what can we as funders do? Well, the ERC, EMBO, you know, those numbers are too big. But we continue to need that interaction. And we all, as scientists, and I think as scientists we feel that, have a shared responsibility. And so we have to look at that politically. Another thing I hope that EOSC will take very seriously, and we haven't touched upon, is the ethical duty to include data worldwide. I refer, for example, to the exploitation of data, especially in my own field, genetics. I'm not a human geneticist, but it applies to human genetics above all. The data of people around the world, where we have, again, you know, the US probably more than Europe, but we too have taken it for granted that we can use the data from subjects in, say, Africa. That is not good. They own their own data. That has to be enshrined in responsible data use. And I'm looking to EOSC to play a leading role there.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, Klaus, let's move on to another technology domain. It was also quite prominent in Robert's presentation, right? AI. So, you're a computer scientist. You've been following the evolution of this domain very closely over the years. How does data sovereignty, some of these aspects of data integrity and security, how do you see that playing out in the field of AI in particular and other emerging digital technologies?
Yeah, first, data sovereignty doesn't have to be a barrier to access global technologies. And EOSC has been positioned, or in the many papers which have been cited by Marc Lemaitre, as a hub, a data hub for artificial intelligence. That is, in EOSC we can provide data which is then being used by AI methods for responsible artificial intelligence, because the data we provide in the EOSC or the EOSC Federation is high quality data. We ensure sovereignty, that makes clear ownership retains with the data providers. But it's also important to note that we ensure provenance. So we record who is doing what with my data record. And all that is important for responsible AI, because what we are experiencing at the moment with the big, particularly generative AI models, is that we do not know what is the basis upon which these models have been trained. That is unclear. We don't have that information. If we replace that With the EOSC and the data provided by the European community, we have more transparency, leading to more responsible AI and also more explainable AI, meaning we can explain to the users why this or that result was created by an AI tool.
Great. Robert, I'm going to ask you to build on this because, I mean, AI is obviously one of a portfolio of what we see as critical or strategically important emerging technologies, whether those are information, materials, or similar. So how do you see the EOSC platform and Europe's current strategy as supporting its competitiveness agenda? Because those two sometimes have tensions between them.
Yes, of course, this whole field is full of trade-offs, and so you need really balanced arguments. I think actually the future of a lot of science and technology will be very human-centered. It's about how it will serve its citizens. So essentially, there's a long tradition of Europe of integrating its values with science and technology. And clearly, I think, in the developing of AI, but many other things, whether it's medicines, materials, it's incredibly important that we involve the stakeholders. So I think actually Europe can be, in some sense, a living lab for producing, whether it's products or new companies that actually serve the people in a responsible way. And one big issue we see in technology is that, in some sense, the absorptive power of society is sometimes limited. So we can have terrific technology, but then people don't accept it. And so there have been a few occasions in the past where basically we took the wrong exit in those technologies. And I think actually, citizens are rightly skeptical about, the behavior and the intent of big tech companies. And so I think to get this right and to make sure that actually citizens are taking along on this exciting ride of accelerating technology, I think this might be Europe's unique position. Because again, it's not a top-down structure. Europe is very much about bottom-up. It's also not entirely companies and markets that drive it. As I said, it's a lot about the involvement of lots of the different kind of partners. But I think if we see what are the great promises of technology, it's actually delivering results. New medicines that we actually want to take because we trust them. New technologies that we trust to use. And so Europe, I think, with its integrated market, its values, its federated structure, this can be a tremendous, also economic competitive advantage. Because the things what we see, where does economic growth come from these days? It's kind of in the products that scale easily. So they're often in the knowledge domain. And so I think, again, if it works in Europe, as kind of a test market, I think you have a very good position to make it work in the world because of our pluralistic and complicated nature. Europe, in many ways, is a scale model for the world. And so I think this could be a true competitive edge.
Thank you, Robert. Matthias, do you agree? I mean, your community are among some of the leading technology universities in Europe. Do you also take this human-centric, society-oriented view?
Yes, no, thank you. So first, a short addition to the data sovereignty, because I was triggered by this here. Sometimes I get this question, how EOSC then fits in data sovereignty. And to me, EOSC done right is data sovereignty. You have, of course, the sovereignty in the notion of having the capacity and capability to act in your own right. And for that, the right levers that we need is scale, critical mass, and excellence. And an EOSC done right will support all three of those. So in that sense, to me, it's a direct line between EOSC and European data sovereignty in a very positive sense, in a very sense that we can be in a position to act in our own right. So just to clarify that, when it comes to taking a societal perspective or a broader perspective, including economic consideration, but also societal considerations, I fully agree. And this is also, to me, why it's helpful to use the research integrity framework around honesty, reliability, respect, and accountability to frame the discussions and the narratives there, because it immediately leads to excellence in research leading to good societal outcomes and good economic outcomes as a part of that, but not exclusively focus on that. That, to me, is indeed the European approach.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Right, I'm going to take another question from Slido, and I'm going to put this to Maria and Klaus now. It's a slightly provocative one, but, you know, keeps us all awake. We have to stay in shape for the disco later. This spirit of European collaboration, I'm thinking back to a roundtable I moderated at the beginning of September on innovation financing. And one of the participants memorably said, when it comes to vision and strategy, we're all European. You put money on the table, and it's every man for himself. So through the lens of EOSC and the pan-European entities like ERC that it looks to support, how do we avoid this fragmentation? How do we ensure that there are genuine and equitable partnerships among member states towards a European vision, and not just lip service to making contributions here or there, but still asking fundamentally, what can I get out of it? Not so much what I put in. Would you like to go first, Klaus, and then we turn to Maria?
Yeah. I mean, EOSC is the best example how you can implement that, because EOSC is not merely a technical infrastructure, it brings together people. Look here in the room, we have 490 attendees here participating in this symposium. That is, EOSC is a combination of a social infrastructure and a technical infrastructure. And that is a key difference to many other initiatives in that domain. And also, to me, data sovereignty in Europe is not possible without EOSC. So it's not only linked to one another. EOSC is the key for data sovereignty in Europe. So the key question, or the key answer is, we need to connect the user's needs with the technology. And if you look how many contributions are based on a voluntary in-kind contribution, it's amazing what we have achieved. Everything you see outside at the booth, except for the EOSC EU note, is voluntary work. That is in-kind contribution from the community. So if there is a common shared value system of a community, we together can make things happen, things like the EOSC Federation.
So before we hear from Maria, I have one quick follow-up question, also from Slido. As the Federation moves forward, along with the other initiatives underneath the EOSC umbrella, would you say the priority is on engagement with end users, which perhaps is longer term, higher risk, higher gain? Or is it more in the short term on connecting with providers to make the system sustainable?
It's the users in the end define their needs and wants for their research in Europe. And to serve these needs and wants, we need the Federation. For that reason, number one is the needs and the wants of the users, of the community, and then we build up a federation, like we did with the EOSC Federation, to serve these needs. And if you look how the EOSC developed, we did not start with the technology and then provided it to the users, asked them, well, is that what you want? We did it the other way around. We had many discussions internally, we had many policy papers which we developed, and then only last year we kicked off the technical development of the EOSC Federation.
Very good, thank you. Now, Maria, what's your thoughts on the federated approach of thinking and doing European?
Not easy, really, in fact, really hard. We have to remember we're talking about science here. And if you ask everyone fighting their own little corner or their big pinnacle, whatever, that is part of science. You can, if you want to discover something, you have to be there first. Otherwise, it's not a discovery. And so that makes it problematic. And I think what has to be recognized that is part of science and it is part of competitiveness. Competitiveness means competing, trying to be better than the others. And when it comes to our federal approach, just everyone has to recognize that they have to do their own bit. And in science funding, we actually see this. I have some science ministers from countries coming to me and saying, why don't we get more ERC grants? Do something so that we get more ERC grants. The only thing I can say is we have many, many examples where individual countries do their own bit to increase their chances, and that works. One of the EU 13 countries, Czechia, were the top in terms of success rates in one of our recent calls because they had found ways of dealing with it. I also want to add one little thing. I can go on about griping about the problems that our federal system, it's not even a federal system, it's individual countries. We're not one Europe. We're 27 EU member states, and remember, there's more to Europe than that. We've also got Switzerland and UK who are very much advanced in science. So now I forgot what I was going to say, but I see the clock ticking, so I'd better stop. I'll say it if I remember in a moment.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Now I'm going to give Robert the chance.
Oh no, I wanted to say, oh yeah, I remembered. There is an advantage to federalism or to diversity, as it is in evolution, may the best survive. If somebody goes rogue in Europe, for instance, allows a liberal, well-funded university to leave their country, indeed forces them to leave, it's only one country. In the US, what we see is they're all affected now. Nobody survives. So there is a little bit of an advantage in diversity as well, and we should use that and be aware of that and cherish it.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, Robert, you get, as a former minister, to jump in on this one, and then we have one final question for the panel. Matthias will lead on that, but Robert, you first.
I want to underline that point. So a coordinated approach is not all doing the same thing. In fact, is in an atmosphere of mutual trust, each doing what you're good at, and make sure it kind of all adds up. And I think if I want to give a provocative answer to your provocative question, I think, in some sense, the central Brussels initiatives should somehow, as a, I would say, kind of a boundary condition, have that national policies have that nature. So being perhaps even more complementary, but at least having a common strategy of which goals you want to achieve.
Yeah, great point. And actually, it's a good segue into the final question. And we're going to have about a minute each for comments before we hand back to Marilyn. But it's about skills, which is another area, as you would know, Robert, education being a strongly protected national competence. But we have a Union of Skills agenda. We have high needs and political urgency about improving the depth and the breadth of our talent pool in Europe. So what role do you think EOSC can provide in this sort of talent attraction, talent development arena, and what are the most valuable support services that it can offer to European researchers in the years to come? And Matthias, I'm going to invite you to go first on this.
Thank you, and I know you didn't want this, but I do a very short comment on the point that was just raised by Maria, and the graph we had from Robert on terms of what member states can do, and we see the plateau. We all know there was a 3% target agreed decades ago, and we're not getting closer to that. It's going very, very slow. And this was something member states themselves agreed to and have agreed to repeatedly since then. So it's a very clear follow-up that could be and should be done as swiftly as possible. This is also how you support research infrastructures across Europe, and this is how you support talent. And the ERC grant is asking for, the success rates are low here. Of course we should make the ERC as big as possible, but it needs to be supported by strong national funding frameworks. Okay, I had to say that, so apologies. When it comes to skills and talent, I think to fully realize data sovereignty and digital excellence here, we indeed need to strengthen skills in areas such as digital stewardship, digital research methods, and responsible and open science practices. So universities, and particularly universities of science and technology, already educate the people who build and use these infrastructures, and everything from the design to the management to the usage to the follow-up to the leadership around them. And I see that EOS can, and it's already starting to amplify this by supporting shared training resources and open curricula grounded in this type of research integrity approach that we've discussed. And as we now seek to retain talent in Europe and attract talent from across the world through initiatives such as Choose Europe, I think embedding these principles into EOSC even more firmly will help make Europe the place where the best researchers want to work and want to stay. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So Maria, and then finally Klaus, 1 minute each, please.
Okay, actually I could make it 0 because everything important has been said. But just in general about skills, we have to remember that skills need to, those of us on the stage here, with some exceptions, are old, we're no longer good at training the necessary skills. EOSC can't do everything, but a bottom-up approach to science is what helps, because the young people go where it's fun, where it's new, they learn this by themselves. And we see this in our applications. You allow the scientists to decide what is tomorrow's future research, they go there. And it is not the case that it's only the esoteric science that gets funded, it's the skills that are trained in those labs.
Excellent. Klaus, you have the final word.
I mean, EOSC is not only a data repository. EOSC offers so many opportunities for researchers to do research, be it at the infrastructure level. You can think about how to establish compute and storage capacities. If you're in that field, you can contribute to it as a service provider, meaning you can develop, for example, algorithms for data analytics. That's an exciting task. You can develop data repositories. These most recently have to be extended towards AI, because they do not only cope with disciplinary metadata, but also with AI data. If you think of the concept human in the loop, like quality assessments, metrics need to be integrated. And the third issue is, as a researcher, you have now access to a vast volume of data around Europe. And what I want to say, you have so many different entry points, no matter from what area of the science system you come, that EOSC is certainly the most exciting environment for scientists in Europe.
And in science policy, with the EU node for the Commission and
definitely, yes,
other officials. So there we go. Well, that's been fun. I wish we could go on for longer, but the clock is ticking, and I'm going to invite Marilyn to come back, wrap up this session, and tell you what you all need to do to feature beautifully in a group photo. Marilyn.
All right. Well, don't go anywhere, because you're also part of a photo. In fact, you'll have your own photo. So that's what's next on the plan for you. So I'm going to have to ask you to stand up, regroup, stay nicely.